Welcome to Conversations with Big Rich. This is an interview-style podcast. These interviewed are all involved in the off-road industry. Being involved, like all of my guests are, is a lifestyle, not just a job. I talk to past, present, and future legends, as well as business owners, employees, media, and land use warriors. Men and women who have found their way into this exciting and addictive lifestyle we call off-road. We discuss their personal history, struggles, successes, and reboots. We dive into what drives them to stay active in off-road. We all hope to shed some light on how to find a path into this world that we live and love and call off-road.
Whether you're crawling the Red Rocks of Moab or hauling your toys to the trail, Maxxis has the tires you can trust for performance and durability. 4 wheels or 2. Maxxis tires are the choice of champions because they know that whether for work or play, for fun or competition, Maxxis tires deliver. Choose Maxxis. Tread victoriously.
Have you seen 4Low magazine yet? 4Low magazine is a high-quality, well-written, four-wheel drive-focused magazine for the enthusiast market. If you still love the idea of a printed magazine, something to save and read at any time, 4Low is the magazine for you. 4Low cannot be found in stores, but you can have it delivered to your home or place of business. Visit 4lowmagazine.com to order your subscription today. My next guest is a guy who never got over playing with tractors. In fact, he has made a life and business out of corn binders. Jeff Ismail, how are you doing this morning?
I'm doing awesome, Rich. How about you?
Doing fantastic. So we got a lot to talk about. You know, your love of tractors and how that all started. You just got back from UA, and so the new UA. So we'll talk about that as well if we can.
Yeah, absolutely. It was a blast.
Cool. So let's start at the very beginning. Where were you born and raised?
I was actually born in Southern California in Northridge, and lived there till I was 13. My dad was a gardener and landscaper, and the smog was just killing him. You know, I mean, it was just bad. And I remember as a kid playing down there. At the end of the day, you try to breathe, and you'd be like, you'd be all uptight in the chest. So, anyways, when I was 13, he moved us up here to Loomis. I'm the youngest of 5, so my one older brother and sister moved up with us. My 2 oldest brothers had already moved out before then and stayed in SoCal. But we moved up here to Loomis. They're still in the same house in Loomis. And, from 13 on, Northern California was my new home, and I love it up here.
Right. And so your dad was a landscaper and gardener and moved you guys up to Loomis. The smog was too bad, was heavy. Was that about late 60s, mid 70s?
No, that was actually, so we moved up here in 88.
Oh, in 88. Okay.
Yep. I started my first year in high school here in Del Oro. My one brother above me, he started as a senior. He's 3 years older than me. And so he finished out high school there. But yeah, I graduated Del Oro. When we moved up here, my dad he still did some landscape jobs and stuff, but he opened up a nursery there on Sierra College, and him and my mom still dabble in plants to this day.
Oh, wow.
Even though the nursery's officially closed, but they'll still they'll never stop being green thumbs and growing plants and stuff. So people still stop by and we'll do that. But yeah, growing up, my summers were, especially in Southern Cal, I remember like all my friends playing and swimming, but not me and my brothers. We were with Dad. We were raking leaves and edging lawns and mowing lawns and doing what we had to do to earn a living. But it taught us you had to work hard for what you want. You can't just sit around, and there is fun. I mean, my dad would take us. He's an avid hunter, and every weekend, if he wasn't on a hunting trip or taking us hunting with him, he was fishing. We did a lot of fishing down there, like Little Rock Dam and going to Castaic Lake. And so as a kid, we did definitely a lot of outdoor stuff. I was always with him like that. Like it got to a point where finally I looked at my mom and said, okay, I want to go with Dad on this trip. And man, I used to follow him for miles and miles. My dad would just put in the miles. He was always the one that came home with the game. So, but he put in the effort, and like I said, I just remember as a kid just chasing him for miles over the Santa Barbara mountains and all that. And then eventually I was a teenager when we moved up here. But um, once we moved up here and as I got older, I definitely started hunting a little bit less, but I still remember, walking the forest up here with them and trying to find a deer or a quail or grouse or something. Always good times though.
Right. And in school, were you a good student, or were you always looking out the window?
Little bit of both. I mean, I always went to school. I always got good grades. I obviously my favorite was like small engine repair and welding shop and stuff. And heck, by the time I think when I was a freshman, I'd already taken the Foley Belsaw Institute of Technology and Repair or something, whatever it's called. I can't remember the name. I still have the notebook, but it was like a mail order thing on how to work on lawn and tractor engines. So I actually still somewhere have business cards from when I was like 13 or 14, and I was doing lawnmower repair right there at the same place my parents still live on Sierra College, and charging people for oil changes and tune-ups and sharpening their blades and all that. But that's kind of like where my mechanics side of it started, because I would tinker with mini bikes and go-karts when I at a young age. That's what I started with when it came to motor recreation. In fact, I was just down at my parents' house a few weeks ago grabbing a pile of frames, and they're laying in the dirt was the mini bike I made in high school that I drove like maybe 100 yards, but I didn't have the technology at the time to build like one special part for it to make the chain drive work. And it was part like Honda 50 suspension and, like I said, custom frame. That's where I used to tinker with. I used to actually take the camshafts out of like the 5 horsepower Briggs and Stratton, and I'd weld on the lobe and I'd grind a new cam profile to it. I had no idea what I was doing, but I was just trying to get more lift and power. And definitely my buddies that were all in mini bikes and go-karts, they never really could ever keep up with me because I would always play with those camshafts. But again, it was just dumb luck making them run better when I did that.
So when you were even smaller, did you play with tractors and stuff?
Before mini bikes and go-karts, I actually had a wagon.
Okay.
I had a wagon I lifted, and like we had a half an acre there in Southern California. So obviously this was in my single digits, but I remember putting like mud tires on it and stuff, and I would rock that wagon all around like it was my 4x4.
Nice.
But tractor wise, I've always liked tractors, and I do have some, but
well, the reference,
Scouts,
of course.
Yeah. Like, nowadays it's, when I say tractor, I'm referring to my trail tractor, Hideous.
Right.
I like to call it. But yeah, I was always in like I said, growing up, my dad, so for the landscape business, he had one international for that. And then he had, which my oldest brother to this day still owns. And then he had, for his hunting and all that, he had a 59 B120 crew cab, Travelalls. And my other older brother still owns that truck to this day. So that's where the whole international harvester bug comes from, is that my dad had a couple international harvesters, and all of us, even my 2 oldest brothers, are in the similar business. And it's, we're an IH family, I guess you could say. Some grew up in Ford, some Chevy, some Dodge, but we grew up in IHs. So a lot, that's what we kind of
gravitated to or stayed
sit
with.
behind the wheel of.
There you go. So you're working in high school. Summers are spent working with your dad.
Well, yeah, in the beginning, like I said, as a teenager in Southern Cal, once we moved up north, he opened up the nursery. But yeah, when we moved to Loomis, the 4 acres, like half of it was jungle. And I remember my brother and I and my sister doing a Geraldo Rivera like impersonation of like tunneling through the jungle and stuff. And then like we weren't even up for 3 days. And then the next morning, my dad's waking us up butt early and going, "Come on, we got to go to work," and we started tearing out that jungle. And, he graded that whole property and now raises cattle on it, for both supplemental income and for keeping the freezer full. But that was, that's when I first started, and I actually got a job down the street at a nursery. And what's funny is my mom and I both applied at High Ranch Nursery, and and my mom's the experienced one, of course, but they hired me and not my mom. And my mom ended up going up to Isley's nursery in Auburn, where she ended up being there for 25 years, where she retired out of. But so I did nursery work a little bit, and then I think by the time I got my first Scout, I was like 16 and a half, and then shortly after I got my first job, and that was Auburn Equipment Rental, just above the Ford dealer there in Auburn. It's obviously long gone, but so I was working there part-time, actually, and then once I graduated high school, I was full-time. I kind of started as an equipment washer there, and by the age, like, somewhere in the age of 16, by the age of 19, I was managing the place, making a whopping like $7.85 an hour.
High
So I
rolling.
needed to make, I liked it and all that. The owner was a cool dude, and good people, and as people quit above me, that's why I kept stepping up. But I was, they would see in me that I'm responsible, and hey, this kid can run this place and stuff. So eventually I went from there, and then the mechanic left back to, I think, Georgia, Jerry. And so I was like, I'm kind of done. I don't want to deal with people. So he moved me in the back, and I was doing that. Like I said, I wasn't making much money. And as a young kid, we always have big ambitions. So I left there and joined one of my cousins into the construction business. So I started doing, humping lumber and all that kind of stuff, and digging ditches, whatever they needed, until one day they discovered I knew how to weld. And the one benefit to working for this company was a lot of the prevailing wage jobs we were on. So if we were at the shop, we're just making our base wage. It wasn't much. But usually on the jobs, they're all government jobs. We're making prevailing, we're making good money. Well, once they discovered, like I said, I could weld, they had me back at the shop at base wage, pumping out wrought iron fencing for jobs and doing other stuff. And I was like, it was cool and all. Like I said, another good company. Like I said, when I would get out on the job, it was good money. But that was around the time I rented a little, like a one-day shop out of Newcastle, and officially started working on IHs. So that would have been around 1996, I want to say.
So you owned one at 16 and a half, and was it pretty much stock, or did you start fixing it up then? And then is that what
fixing it? No, it started like a stock Scout, 4-cylinder 190, is a 76 Scout 2. I still have it to this day. It's a million pieces. One day we'll rebuild it. 196, four speed, 354 gears, just the sky blue. That's not the color they call it, but I've always known it just as sky blue. And just, cool little stockish Scout. So yeah, it didn't take me long before I started tinkering with that thing and throwing leaf springs under it and 33s. And then it didn't take long. I was taking, because I was a little bit ahead in high school and had all my credits, I started they were allowing me to go to Sierra College and take classes there to continue on and like fulfill my duties. So I took engine machining, and I was like building heads and blocks and stuff. It was pretty cool learning that side of it. But that was about the time I did the V8 swap on the Scout, and in a weekend, basically, had a used 304 all Krylon rebuilt, and waited for a weekend and popped that thing out, popped it in, added one exhaust pipe down the side, because the 196 basically looks like the V8 on one side, so I only had to add half an exhaust system. Got all that done, and V8 swap teacher gave me, I walked him out to the parking lot, and he gave me extra credit for doing a V8 swap on that thing, and it looked good. But that was my first intro into it, was that Scout. That's where it all started, and I started fabricating on it and making bumpers, and like I said, it learned a lot, had a lot of adventures and misadventures in it. But like I said, I hope one day to rebuild that. My son Zaid started like tearing it down one day, and he was going to rebuild it in his almost 10 years ago. And then, as a young kid, he's like, oh, this will be the easy part's tearing them apart, and then putting it all together. And then he moved on to other projects. But we have all the pieces. I still have that truck, and yeah, someday we'll put it together. I mean, I used to take that thing to Southern California. I used to desert race back in the day with my older brother, and I was co-driver. And so like every 6 weeks I was driving that thing down to Southern Cal, and I used to tow a travel trailer behind it. I remember almost dying on the 15 when I jackknifed my travel trailer trying to keep caught up. And oh man, like I said, so many adventures just running down and out there, out to the desert with it, and wheeling here locally a little bit with it. Not too crazy. I don't think I ever Rubicon or Fordiced that Scout, but just, going and by over Folsom Lake by Rattlesnake and stuff, just, as a young kid, just, messing around with it out there. But mostly it was trips out to the desert with that thing.
And you said your brother, you were off-road racing with your brother. Was he based in Southern California? Did he move back to there?
Yeah, he lives in Lancaster to this day. And so he together, like, I bought this from a buddy of mine, I think for like $60 in a lawnmower. I got this Scout Traveler, and that was the basis of the racer. I gave it to my brother. He built it into a race truck. I think I was able to get down there and help him like wire it, was about it. But he pretty much built it, and then we raced initially in MDR. Or no, I'm sorry, in La Rana. We started in La Rana and raced that for a couple seasons in the 400 class. And that was fun. It was, it had a 6-cylinder at the time. We kind of did that just to stay out of trouble, really, just limiting the horsepower. You can only go so fast. And it was fun. And then until, if I remember right, I think La Rana, they had issues and folded or something. And then we ended up in MDR. And at that time, we switched from a 400 class to an 850 class. So we were, the 4x4, what's the 850 class, like 4x4 full width, or I can't remember exact definition of it, but I know it had to do with us being 4-wheel drive. And we were pretty much racing against the Currys.
Okay.
And that was kind of fun and interesting. In fact, when I still run into this day, and I'm like, hey, remember me? We used to race you in a Scout,
You don't forget people that race in Scouts.
Yeah. So, and it was always, there was a couple seasons we won, and it was always by attrition. It was kind of like, I always looked at it as the turtle and the hare. I mean, they were always faster than us. I mean, always blowing by us. But it was just a matter of something on their rig breaking or, going wrong. And then we would just be the little turtle, just steadily making our laps. And eventually it's like, oh, dude, we finished in front of them, or they lost, they broke. So they didn't finish. They got a DNF. And we would be the winner. So, I mean, it was fun. That truck was, as a co-driver, somebody who sat in it was a beating of torture. I mean, being leaf springs front and rear and everything, and Rancho shocks and all that. I just remember so many times, like, I had to have my ball up my hand into a fist, stick it between my belt and my chest, tighten my belt as tight as I could, just trying to collapse my chest because I felt like my innards were ripping out. It's weird to explain, but talking to other people, they know what I'm talking. Racers, they know what I'm talking about. They're like, oh yeah, I know that. You get into a certain angle and a certain rhythm, and like, yeah, your innards start kind of jiggling around in there, and it ain't good.
No.
So I did race after race after race with him. I did pretty much every race until the day, I guess, I cheated the Grim Reaper on an off-road accident. And when I broke my femur in an off-road accident, that kind of slowed me down in life. I think that was for me, my day of infamy on December 7th of 96. So that was the day like to say I cheated death, you could say.
So what happened in that accident?
So that was kind of a local thing. I was right here in Auburn. So my old boss from Auburn Equipment Rental, Don Carroll, he just lives right up the road off Bell Road there on the east side, like just past that where the helicopter is. There's the Cal Fire, not the Cal Fire helicopter, but the rescue helicopter there. Oddly enough, they'll come into play here in this story in just a moment. He had a property back there in an easement with the railroad that they could drive to their house with. And his son Brett was cruising his Jeep and messing around back there and got stuck. He had, I don't know those Jeep things too much, just your basic Wrangler of the day. And it had bald tires, and he just couldn't make it up this little 20, 30 foot switchback. So he gave me a call. Hey, Jeff, can you come out and help me? I'm like, yeah, dude, I'll be there first thing in the morning. So I came out there with my old Scout Terra. I named it Reynolds Wrap because that thing was, or no, this was a brown. I take that back. This was before Reynolds Wrap. This was a brown Terra that I had only been driving for like 10 months. I built it and raced it at Prairie City in the mud drags and won both my heats in it. It was an awesome time. And then did one Rubicon trip in it. And then fast forward to this day. So I show up, all I was a poor boy, poor old farm boy, as I like to say back then. And all I had was a chain. So I went to I pull him up this incline to get him up top of the road. And I got him up the one part and I just needed to get him up one more. And I felt something happen and I looked back and the chain had pulled the bumper off his Jeep. And I was like, oh shit, man, excuse me. This kid's got a pretty nice little Jeep. I hate to do that. So I put my Scout in park. It was a spring over dealio. I'd never had the parking brake hooked up.
Right.
So I put it in park, had a torque flight in it, walked down the hill, and he's still sitting in his Jeep. And he goes, what do you think? And I crouched down and I look at it and I'm like, man, you better get out and look at this yourself. I just didn't have the heart to tell the kid I just tore his bumper clear off his Jeep. Right as I stood up and right as he had his back turned getting out of the Jeep, my Scout ran me over. And basically I was the meat in the sandwich. It smushed me between the Jeep and the bumper of the Scout and the bumper of the Jeep. And like I feel like it threw me uphill. And I just remember laying there watching the Scout and the Jeep go down into the gully. And Brett got knocked down, but fortunately he was okay. I looked over, my left leg is doing a turn to the left where it's not supposed to bend. So I had to pick my leg up and straighten it out. And the one blessing is Brett's mom was the head ER nurse of Auburn Faith Hospital.
Oh, wow.
She happened to be home that morning. So there was a rental house that they owned in between their house. So I remember Brett ran up and got Frank, and Frank came down to console me until Melinda could get down there. And then she pulled traction. And of course it was because it wasn't fully life-threatening, and in fact, they couldn't get the helicopter to me anyway. So they put me in an ambulance, drove me to the helicopter that I had just driven by earlier that morning, loaded me up, flew me down to Roseville, another helicopter or another ambulance ride to the hospital there, and in the end, like I said, it was shattered femur, but otherwise I was okay. And like I said, I cheated death because, like I said, it was just crouched down. That could have been my head, I would have been done. But I stood up at the very last second, and then instead of my head, it was my femur. So I've always just kind of said I feel like I cheated death that day. And always December 7th, I'm always kind of real anxious those days. I always remember it. It's like, December 7th, yeah, stay away from off-roading or don't walk behind any vehicles or, and anytime I'm off-roading, I'm always actually just real, like, try not to ever walk on the downhill side of a vehicle unless I know that it's, got a good rock in front of it or something's holding it in front. But anyways, yeah, I ended up living, obviously. They put a rod in me and I got out of the hospital after a few days. And then a few days later, I got a blood clot and I was back in the hospital. And then I got out, and the girlfriend I had at the time, all of this was an epiphany to me that I needed to move on from life, and I was just letting her use my Scout. And exactly 3 weeks later, to the day, she totaled it, and she was drunk and totaled it, and that was the end of that Scout. So I only had that copper gold brownish Scout for like 10 months. I remember building it. It was a cool Scout, but it lived a short life. But anyways, I was in the Scout business by then. That was 96. I had started earlier that year, January, February, and things were doing good. But then breaking my leg, I got behind. And I just before that had met and hired Chad Maycroft, who's like my brother from another mother at this point in life. He was working for me, and he really helped me keep the business going while I was down and out. And but we really, when I look back, I mean, we didn't know what we were doing in business. We were just, we were loving wrenching. We liked IHs. That's what brought us together. Oddly enough, like we went to high school together, Chad and I, but we didn't really know each other in high school. So I didn't meet him until afterwards on one of the Sierra Scout trail rides. And then I eventually met his dad, Hal, but we stuck together and we did the business up until like 98. And like I said, I just didn't know what I was doing. And then what I like to say, I just failed miserably and ended up getting out of it. By 99, I was working for other shops locally.
So let's when you said you started your business, did you walk away from the equipment
Construction.
rental? That's right.
Well, no,
The
I was
shop,
at
your
construction by then.
Right.
Yeah, no, it was like I said, good prevailing wage. I was making prevailing wage, making good money when I was on the site. I remember walking into my boss's office, explaining my situation, said, "Hey, I got this little side gig going. It's starting to pick up. I'd like to switch over to part-time with you if that works. If not, then, and he's like, no, he goes, hey man, you're great and all that. I really appreciate it. But, part-time doesn't work for us very well, but good luck with your adventure,
Okay. So you left on
So
good
that
terms.
was like, that was easily February of 96 when I really, like I said, officially launched out. And I'd say by 99, it was all over with. And we were broke. And like I said, I just was not a financially responsible individual at that time. More or less, just chasing the girls and drinking a beer and just trying to survive. I mean, literally, Chad and I, we'd be so broke coming into the shop. We'd go through every parts vehicle we had, even though we'd gone through them. And sometimes we'd still scrounge up enough money, change out of them to go buy a soda out of the machine out front. That oddly enough, we're paying the electricity to operate, but we didn't own the machine. We just had some dude that stored his soda, machine there. So anyways, every once in a while we'd come in and Hal would have a note on the door and saying, "Hey, there's breakfast paid for at Edelweiss. Go eat up." And we'd be like so thankful, to go like, "Oh, let's go, dude. Let's go eat." We go over there and go, "Hey, Hal left us he's like, oh yeah, you guys sit down. Your breakfast is paid for. What do you guys want?" So it was so awesome to have that kind of support.
Right. And the work that you guys were doing, it was general maintenance and fab work, everything.
So,
and the concentration on international harvesters.
Yeah, mostly at that time it was all Scout 2s. It was the most popular. So we were doing anywhere from a complete frame off custom build to spring over axle conversions, and then a lot of maintenance, oil leaks, electrical. That's always the big things on these things. But so we were doing a lot of maintenance work. One of the things like what, besides not being financially responsible on the business side, but what also kind of killed us, I remember the day a gentleman walked in and said, "You guys need a website." I'm all, "Website?" I mean, we were so busy. I'm like, "What do I need a website for?" I go, "We're already so busy. I don't need that. Get out of here." And the guy left. And then, like, we had a few yellow page ads at the time in our local area. But what happened, what I came to the conclusion is we, on these vehicles, you do so much work, you make them drivable again, the customer's happy. You don't see them except for maybe an oil change or something at that point. And we basically saturated our local market. We had no more business. And nobody outside really knew of us. So we didn't have like parts for sale at the time or anything like that. We were mostly just a shop fixing these things up. So once we had fixed up everybody in our local area, business got tight. It wasn't, definitely wasn't as profitable, or there wasn't as much work, And so when I look back on at that day, and I'm like, man, it was really a website that I needed. But again, 99, I got out of it. It's like I was living with my cousin at the time, being a bachelor, working at a automotive shop in Auburn, pretty content in my 20s just being a bachelor. And then my dad came to me one day and he's like, "I want to take you back to the home country, to Syria, to get married." And I'm like, "Oh, I'm not ready to get married, but Pops, but you know what? I won't mind going back there," because I hadn't seen a lot of my cousins and relatives since like 85. My parents immigrated here from Syria in the 60s. My grandfather immigrated through Ellis Island way back in the day, and actually worked for Ford, oddly enough. So anyways, that's where the whole Syria thing comes in. So I'm like, I gotta tell you what, I had just started a new job at Rogers Automotive there in Auburn. And I said, "You come in, talk to my boss, and if he says I can leave, I'll go." And I didn't think my dad was going to show up. Son of a bitch, if he wasn't there the next morning talking with Bob and they're just having a good old boy conversation, I'm like, oh man, I better start packing my bags. I think I'm going to Syria. So, like I said, I really wasn't. I was just like, I'm just going, and I am not ready to get married, but whatever. I'm going to go on this trip. My dad's paying for it. Why not? So I went, and I swear I wasn't even in the country more than an hour or two, and like the moms are stopping by with the daughters and courting, like showing the goods, meeting the parents. Like they leave this was so and so, and that's her daughter. I'm like, yeah, okay, whatever. Like I said, I just wasn't interested. And I remember when I met my wife, she caught my eye the first time we were getting a bus ride out front. They use those little vans out there in that part of the world. And I remember seeing her. So that was the first time she caught my eye. And then fast forward a couple weeks, I'm hanging out with my cousins, and they're like, "Hey man, you want to go with us? We're going to go across the street and shoot the breeze with the neighbors." And I'm like, "Yeah, I'll go with you." So I go over there, and that's when I see Norma for the first time. I didn't even know that was her name right at the moment. She just caught my eye again. I'm like, oh, there she is, and she's the only one that's like, she went and made us popcorn. And so I'm just, hanging out with my male cousins and, hanging out with her brothers basically for a little bit. And then when we went to leave, I go, "Hey, who's the girl that made us the popcorn?" "Oh, that's Norma." I'm all, "Norma?" I'm like, "She's got an American name too?" And they're like, "Well, yeah, that's an American name, I guess." And I'm like, "Well, holy crap, man." I'm like, okay. So like I said, from there, man, she just won my heart, basically on first sight. And, back there, it's just kind of like, hey, if there's an available Syrian heritage male from America, it's like you consider it. But anyways, long story short, she had a good feeling about me. That's what she told me. She goes, "Yeah, my stomach told me that when you had asked if I wanted to come back to America with you and all that, and I just had this good feeling." She had to talk to her dad, and he said, "Of course, yes." I was like, "What are you waiting for, girl? Pack your bags." So we began the process of we started first. I extended my trip, and we dated for a little bit, and went on some trips, and just made sure like we were compatible and all that. And it's like, oh yeah, no, I'm just head over heels. So we began the paperwork, and it was about a good 10 months almost. It was a good 10 months it took me to get all the paperwork, dealing with the Syrian side of it and then our American embassy side of it. And ever since dealing with that part of life, I kind of came to the conclusion there is no mountain you cannot climb. Dealing with a foreign third world country government is one heck of a education in life, because like I said, if you can get through their BS, and then on our side, I remember calling our Congressman Doolittle over here, writing him letters, and that's exactly what he was. But in the end, I'm sure you remember him. But anyways, I eventually, it took a while. It infuriates us to this day to see. I don't want to get into politics here, but to see what's going on to this day of people crossing the border illegally, when all my family are a family of immigrants, and we've all come here legally. We believe in America. We love this country, and it's like I said, it's like we did it the right way. It's like there's no other excuse. You just have to wait in line and do your service and all that to do everything you need to do to get here. But we did it anyways. I went back. We had a beautiful wedding back there in Syria. We came back here. We had another wedding out here, and man, that was 24 years ago, 5 days ago. So.
Oh, nice! Congratulations! Happy anniversary!
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah,
thank you.
So then, she became a partner in the business. What happened when you guys got back to the United States?
Let's see. We got back. I was still doing general automotive repair. I had moved on to like Auburn Honda. I was working on Toyotas and Hondas. And that's when, let's see, I was about 29, and that's when I blew out my hips. I actually had to have my hips rebuilt at age 29.
Wow.
So it wasn't replaced. Doctors didn't want to replace them. They're like, "You're too young. They're all, if I replace them now, I guarantee me replacing your hips every 5 to 10 years. So they're all, I'm going to try this new technique. We're going to drill some holes in your bones. You're going to have to stay off your feet for months at a time. And we're going to try to get your hips to rebuild naturally. So that's what I did. I walked in with my doctor's note to Honda to let them know where I was at. And they said I shouldn't work anymore. And then the owner came out and said, I heard you're quitting. And I'm just like, okay, I see how this is going, you know? So I went on disability there for like 10 months. I had my hips rebuilt. Like I said, there, I had one done and then I had the other. But during that time, I've always taken I seem to get lucky, and like the worst of things that happen to me, I can turn them around and just make them the best. So I didn't know poop about computers back then. Not a whole lot, right?
Okay.
Sitting there, not much to do. I still had tons of like used parts left over from the previous IH business. So my wife's working with my mom up at Isley's nursery. Zayd's still in diapers. I'm watching him and just trying to heal up. And I get on eBay and I start listing some of these parts I have. And I'm like, man, that thing just sold for that. I didn't even have to talk to this guy. Like, man, that was pretty easy. So in that year of being off, I mean, I was just selling a lot of parts on eBay. And it was like, man, I started to save up a nice little nest egg because we were living at my parents' house and eventually, you know, with the goal of buying our own place.
Right.
And so we're just slowly saving up. And after like 10 months, I got healed up. I went to go work. My first job was at Euro Motors. I was working with my other brother from another mother, Darren, who's my general manager and been with me the longest here of the 20 years. He's been with me nearly 19 years. I worked with him doing Europeans, and it was cool and all that. I really didn't like working on European cars, but there wasn't enough work for both of us. And I was driving up from Loomis. So I moved on from there. I think I went to go work for Magnuson's Dodge. I was there like 4.2 days. I literally came back from my 4 on 3 off, and there's leaves on my toolbox and I can't find the service writer to find a ticket. And I'm like, I'm out of here. So I left there, went and worked for Master Technicians and back to Toyotas and Hondas. And I was there for a few months, and nice place to work for and all that. But in the end, I kind of knew, like I said, that was like my third job in the same industrial complex. And I knew eventually I would not get along with the owner. And after about 6 months, I kind of walked in to quit and got fired. And I didn't know what to do at that point. That was April 2004. So I'm sitting there and I don't know what to do. Like I said, my dad goes, why don't you just fix up that pole barn out there and start working on internationals again? Oh, okay. If I got Dad's blessing to work out of the house here, why not? So that's what I did. And I haven't looked back. You know, it's been over 20 years now that, you know, that's where the business started, was literally in a pole barn, and it was like a cave. It would be hot, and, you know, you got animals in the stall next to you and stuff. So it would get smelly in the winter or in the summer and all that. You know, you'd hear the animals banging back there, but sometimes the rats running around. It was just, oh man. But hey, man, that's how we started. And, you know, I can't thank my parents enough for that support early on, because that's what gave us a strong early footing to not have to worry about overhead so much. You know, it was just like, Darren needs to get paid, pay our parts suppliers, UPS, we're good. I don't have rent to pay, you know, just Dad stipulated that I had to, you know, save money each month and keep saving money. And eventually in 2008, I want to say, is when we bought our property up here in Grass Valley, and then it took me a little bit more. I kept saving money, and I put a brand new building on it. And then we eventually, I think by like 2010 is when we moved the business up here to Grass Valley.
Nice. And the whole time you're buying, are you buying all the Scouts that you can, or international harvesters that you can find? Is that?
Oh yeah. I'd always, they usually find me, and, you know, somebody will call and go, hey, I got this old Scout or this old Travelall or this old IH pickup and I want to get rid of it. And what will you give me for it? Or, I just want to get rid of it. Come and get it. I don't want to scrap it. And you're like, okay. So I've always had a yard. In fact, I remember, let me back up. Back in the, in the 90s, late 90s when I was doing it, I had so many early Scouts. I was giving them away. I couldn't, nobody would buy them. Everybody wanted a Scout 2. Nobody really wanted pickups or Travelalls even back then. They only wanted Scout 2s, and I'd have so many I just didn't know what to do with. And that was always, and even almost to this day, like the biggest problem for me is not having a big chunk of suitable land to store vehicles on. Even though I have my place in Grass Valley and I've got my business up here in town in Grass Valley, I'm still limited in space. I would have so many more if I had acreage, so to speak.
Right. That's understood.
Yeah.
And you're not looking for more acreage to do that, or are you happy with where you're at?
Yeah, we're looking for more space. I mean, it's like, we always talk about wanting to leave California, but at the same time, we love where we live, and this is our home. And so we might as well just stop fighting that notion and I am looking. If the right piece came along, I would certainly jump on it so I could start storing more vehicles on it and stuff.
Right.
Because there's been times, in fact, we're so full on parts and trucks right now. I'm like, no more right now. We need to sell a few before we bring in. And it's like, oh, this is a great deal. I go, I know it's a great deal, but I have no more room.
So your business now is, explain what your business model is now and how it's all ties together.
So eventually started our own product line called CPT, Crawler Proven Technology, and that was mostly off-road stuff, U-bolt plates, perches, anything Scout specific, just to make awesome suspension, spring over on your Scout, for instance. So that's where that started on the parts side. We've always been doing builds and lifts and all that kind of stuff, mostly big builds, frame offs. But we would take on all sorts of jobs through the years. As the parts business expanded, we opened up an online store. Like I said, I learned back early on, I'm like, wow, man, this online stuff is the hot ticket. So when I got back into business, it wasn't much longer than that when I opened up the store and started selling parts online. And that is today the bulk of our business. I would say a good 90% is online and phone call orders. We're shipping parts for these internationals all over the world. Always getting emails from people all over the world, wanting, Belgium and France, and of course Canada and Australia are two of our biggest customers outside the U.S. But we'll get countries in Africa looking for parts. They have like, yeah, we do the safari. We have these safari rigs. They're internationals, and I need some parts for them. So pretty neat. But that's the bulk of our business. And then we do have a full fabrication and restoration shop up here. So we're doing frame off swaps, a lot of LS builds. If a guy wants, we don't do a lot of link suspension, but if a guy wants one, we've done them and can do them. We've done 2-wheel drive slammed on airbags, Travelalls, all sorts of cool stuff.
Wow,
through the years.
That's not something I would think of. A Travelall slammed on airbags.
Oh yeah. There's no job. So I'm so fortunate to have such an awesome and talented crew here, led by Darren, and Rick, and all the guys here. Man, it's just there's not a job they're not afraid to do. So if we've always have this thing, we say if the job makes sense, we'll take it. We've had people come to us and want to do crazy stuff, and we're just like, that doesn't make sense. I don't want to get involved in that. We'll pass, because we're usually booked up for a year plus. So it's nothing. You can't just, it's very rare someone just calls and gets their truck in here the next week. It's like I said, the customers, we have LS engines and transmissions with names on them up on the rack. Those are people who have paid for those parts, and they're waiting in line for their turn to come here and get their drivetrain modernized.
Well, that's
more.
A good problem to have.
Yeah. Not complaining there. Not one day. We definitely are very blessed with the amount of business we have today.
Very good. And you also have another part of the business called binder books.
Yeah. So binder books, we purchased that about 5-6 years ago. So that's a company that's been around for a very long time. That company at this point must be about 30 years. It was originally started up in Oregon by a gentleman named Scott Satterlin, and he just collected books and started flipping them. And eventually, Scott got ill and passed away from cancer. And his wife Cindy took over the business and kept it going. And I would see Cindy once a year. We would go up to a show in Brooks, Oregon, called the Binder Bee, and we would talk. She's like, "Hey," one day she's like, "Are you interested in maybe buying binder books or buying our NOS parts that at least we have?" And I said, "Sure. I'll have to make a trip up there." So finally, one day, I made a drive up. I hopped in my Travelall, my daily driver, hauled Bud up there, went and saw everything she had, and brought home all the NOS parts, and then got to work on thinking how we could add this business to our portfolio, so to speak. And on my property here in town in Grass Valley were 3 buildings, and one of the buildings at the time I was renting out as an office to a construction company. So I kind of looked and I saw the equipment that they had up in Oregon, the printing equipment, and I was like, I think I can make this work. So we settled on a deal, and I had the construction company move out. In fact, I think they're still our next door neighbors. And we moved binder books in, and my wife handles all that. She does all the printing. So we're licensed to reprint all service, owners, parts manuals for basically anything International Harvester, Case IH, back to day one. So it doesn't matter if it's a reaper or a corn or a thresher or a semi truck or a refrigerator. I mean, if International Harvester made it and we have a publication for it, which our library is quite vast, we're licensed to reprint that. And then each quarter we're paying royalties to International, to Case New Holland, and then now to Scout Motors, who is bringing back the Scout as an electric EV.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah.
And any other aspects to the business?
Well, with four-wheeling in the last 5-6 years, I've been on what was Ultimate Adventure and now Unreal Adventure. So that has really opened the doors to a lot of companies that we're now dealing with today. And so that's like I said, we're have so many new relationships, and like off-roading is obviously my personal hobby, but our CPT line falls in. Today, CPT could be anything from a stock OEM part though to, suspension parts, like how we started. But I try to push our line, but the whole UA thing is just been a whole nother facet of life lately. Especially these last 6 years, my whole schedule kind of rotates around that part of the year. It's always a blast doing that.
And it's nice that it's continuing.
Absolutely. Was stoked to see Christian and Trent grab the reins and keep it alive. And I can't thank the other sponsors, especially like Skyjacker, picking up the presenting title, and Quigley and Off-Road Design and Milestar Tires. I got to say, there was 21 of us, 23 rigs wheeling this whole last week on Milestar tires, and there was 0 flats. So we were in some pretty sharp rocks, and we were asking for trouble. And I just got to say, man, I'm just amazing. Amazing tires, real great. But I got to say, overall, just what a great week we had down there wheeling. I've never wheeled Arizona or New Mexico, so that was pretty cool to get a flavor of that kind of Southwest wheeling I've not experienced before. Closest would have been Hammers. But then how the terrain changes. We went north to like Farmington, and things started to kind of smooth out and all that. But then totally different wheeling once we got to Montrose.
Right, because then you got into trees and stuff.
Yeah. Trees, still in the canyons, because we were west, is more still deserty kind of like, but still sharp rocks, and that trail called Die Trying was just freaking awesome.
And what is it like with all the cronies and the new people? The reader rides. I mean, they're not reader rides now, but they're they're the followers, you might say, that get a chance. The everyday guy.
man, I've developed so many awesome relationships through the last 6 years dealing with these guys. I have definitely learned a lot from them. I mean, just their vehicles and their builds is what inspired me to build my truck Hideous, my 52 International. That really is people know that truck. They're like, they don't know me, they know my truck. They're like, oh yeah, I've seen that thing on the internet. That thing's so cool. So like I said, to hang out with those guys for a couple of years. I remember on my second UA, the last day I rolled my White Scout. That's been my rig for years, and I was like, man, I was trying to survive the week. I was having fuel issues the whole week, and I was just trying to survive. And I ended up putting it on its side. Granted, it did get me on the cover of Four Wheeler, so that was cool. But after that, it was like, man, what am I going to do? I already knew I was going to build something else. I knew, like, after 2 years, I'm like, all right, White Scout is cool and all, but I try to keep that thing nice. And the wheeling we're doing is pretty gnarly, pretty kind of above my head on what I had at the time. So I got back. I said I had rolled White Scout. I'm walking through the yard, just in the shop here. I brought up this 52 International truck from my house. I had sold the bed, and I told the guys, hey, let's just park this thing out. I go, the grill should sell pretty fast. People are always wanting those. And so anyways, they sold like a door hinge and a wing window out of it or something. And I'm walking by it after that UA, and I look at it, and all of a sudden it clicked. I said, I'm building that truck right there. So I walked down to the parts. I said, don't sell another part off that truck up there. I'm building it. They're like, you got it, boss. So that's what began what is known, what I call Hideous. And again, it's got multiple names: Trail Tractor, Hideous, Trout, because it's half truck and half Scout. So I needed to figure out that the frames on those things aren't just very well built for an off-road rig. They're pretty flat, so they don't give you a lot of up travel. The other thing I wanted incorporating into this is as much of our CPT parts as I could. And since we built a ton of stuff for the Scout chassis, that's basically what I took. Is I took the long wheelbase Scout Terra Traveler frame and built it all up, and then I dropped the 52 body onto it and built it into what it is. Like I said, the builds from UA, from Vern Simons, and from Trent McGee's Scout, and the Jeep, the CJ that Christian has, and some of those other prior builds is like low and wide. Low and wide was the theme with those guys, and you wouldn't think it. I was always a spring over axle kind of guy. But I'm like, man, that spring under low wide it works just fine. And that's how I built Hideous. So I did it spring under, leaf springs front and rear, did our CPT reverse shackle kit. Eventually I put Alcan springs in it with orbit eyes. And for what it is, for as basic a truck it is, another thing is a lot of people think, oh, you got an LS under the hood. I go, no, sir, it's a 392 International. Got to keep my core audience happy. So,
right.
392 International, NV 4500, and Atlas 4.3, and then Ultimate Dana 60s front and rear. That thing just does awesome. It's planted, it climbs well. I just had so much fun wheeling it this last week. I mean, literally zero issues the whole week. I had one relay got a little angry. I had to swap out for the sniper system and exhaust system. I had to tighten back up. I didn't recheck my bolts after having it out for the pre-work before the trip. But man, it works good. And now that's 4 UAs I've been on that truck in just a hair over 3 years. I can't believe all the states I've had that truck in and wheeled at this point, from as far as Pennsylvania, and it's, I guess at this point, well, as far north as Oregon. I've been up in Oregon with it, but a lot of Oklahoma and Texas and Georgia, Alabama, Tennessee, West Virginia, Kentucky, of course, Utah, and now we have Colorado, New Mexico, Arizona. So I've been in a lot of states with that truck in such a short amount of time, but what a thrill it's been wheeling it. So, and I keep going back and forth. Like White Scout, I'm bringing back for UA next year, and that's my plan at least. And I keep flip flopping on suspension. Spring over, spring under, links. I can't decide. But I don't know. After coming off this last UA and just seeing how well the Trout worked, I'm thinking about just doing the exact same setup. I mean, I've already got Ultimate 60s for it. It already has the 392 and the 5-speed. I'm going to swap out the Jeep 300 for an Atlas, and pretty much I think just mimic Hideous's combination there, and it'd just be a shorter wheelbase and more or less a 100-inch wheelbase versus the 118 that Hideous is at.
Yeah, I just on wheelbases, I like that 108 to like 110.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know what it is. I think just overall, they climb good, they drop good.
They're not too long that you can still get around
get
tight
tight
turns.
corners. Yes.
Yep, I agree with you there. I definitely have to do the Austin Powers, 2-3 point turns sometimes on some of those tight corners at 118 inch.
Yes, but yeah, especially yeah. So what does it look like for the future? And let's talk about what the name of your business is for any of those people out there that don't know.
Yeah, I guess we haven't mentioned it. So IH Parts America, so International Harvester Parts America. And then again, our product line is CPT, Crawler Proven Technology, and then we own the Binder Books name as well. So we do have our IH Parts America website is new as of earlier this year. So there's a lot going on with it on our pictures of our shop, and we have a full retail store here. You can come in and not just buy parts, but I've got puzzles and games for international t-shirts, of course, and it's not just IH related. A lot of people don't know we're almost kind of like your local hot rod store, because you can walk in. I've got Holley carburetors, Sniper injection on the shelf, full array of Bilstein and Skyjacker shocks, and tabs for welding up your suspension, shock tabs. I mean, you name it. There's Swepco oil. We stock a full array of Swepco oil fluids here. So quite a more bit than just IH specific, although we use all this stuff in IH. So I'm real appreciative to have me on the podcast so I can spread that word. I know a lot of locals listen, and they may not realize that what we have here, is more than just International Harvester parts.
I think just knowing that they can get the Swepco oil will bring people in the door.
Yeah, without a doubt. We certainly move a lot of that Swepco power steering oil. We got quite a few local customers that come in and buy that.
And the future, any plans, any goals?
Man, just I'm blessed in life. I gotta say, like I said, I hit my low back in '96, and every day after that is a blessing, and I just want to keep seeing more different parts of the country, and just hope the business continues to stay successful as it has been, as long as everything's going good. I'm real stoked. How it's going, I don't know, man. I'm so happy with the current. I'm just like, some people are like, oh, I can't wait for the future because I know good times. It's like, I'm living in good times. I have no complaints, really. Sure, could things be better on, the cost of living and all that? Yeah, we can get into that, and that's what it is. But like you said, I'm blessed to have a great business, blessed to have such a great crew here. I can leave for 2 weeks to go on an adventure and come back, and any fires, guys? Nope, everything's handled. We did this much business. You just need to go pay the bills because people want to get paid. And I'm like, you got it. So just look forward to just keep wheeling. Like I said, building White Scout back, bringing it for Unreal Adventure next year, and I've got my show coming up next week. We do put on the IH Sierra Fall Rally every year. It's going to be our 17th year. And so looking forward to that. If anyone's local and they want to come out to the Nevada County Fairgrounds on, I don't know when you're going to have this put up, but if they can make it at the October 12th weekend after this, and we'll have probably a good 100 internationals there. May not find a tractor. You might find a tractor or two, but there's going to be a lot of Scouts, pickups, Travelalls.
Nice.
So pretty cool. I enjoy it. I get our IH community together. I've got friends that come from across the country to come help me, and without their help it wouldn't happen. But anyways, we get together, and I get basically my competitors, but a lot of them are also my friends, and they throw a little money down. They send raffle prizes and stuff, and we get the IH community together, and we just celebrate, and go on a couple trail rides. We'll have a street ride and a trail ride on the Friday before, and then on the Saturday, it's really a family event. We'll have a lot of things to do for the kids, and the adults can, we'll have our not just showing up the vehicles, but then we do have vehicle games we do out back. And then we have a big old raffle. And of course, we got to feed them. My wife's an awesome cook, so we get everybody fed for dinner and breakfast the following morning. And
a lot of corn.
What's that?
A lot of corn, kettle corn, boiled corn.
Sometimes people bring a good old fresh. I've got a friend from back east that if he makes it out, he'll usually bring us a fresh bag of corn from the harvest.
There you go.
We joke around with it. You're doing some official corn binding over here.
There you go.
Yeah.
Had to get that joke in.
Oh yeah. No, you can't hide behind it. They are corn binders. Sometimes they're an irrational international. We got all sorts of names for them.
That's a good one.
We can say we've got thick skin over here in the harvester world. We can take it.
Yeah, I've never been vehicle specific, even though, like Marlin, you just would always say, "Hey, there's the Jeep guy," and then one day I showed up to, it was Cruise Moab or one of those where it was a Toyota event in Moab, and I had bought a '82 Land Cruiser Series 60, and he was just absolutely amazed that I had stepped away from a Jeep. But, I've owned just about everything except for internationals.
Right on. Well, you're not going to believe this, but I bought my first Jeep earlier this year. So I finally crossed over to the dark side, as my IH friends.
I don't know. Do you want me to edit that part out?
No. It's cool. I am what I am. But yeah, no, it's a 2A. It's got the V6 in it, already swapped in, although I really was wanting an original Jeep with a flat head so I could do the Red Devil run one day. But this Jeep I couldn't pass up. It belonged to Bill Monahan, who used to build my transmissions back in the day. And it belonged to, I think, a Dick Maynard or Dick someone before that. And what's cool about this Jeep is it's been on Ford Ice and Rubicon back in the 70s and 80s. It's got the little placards on it. It's a well-known Jeep for our local area. And so just the fact that it belonged to Bill, and it was Mike Monahan and Rich who helped me buy it a little bit ago. Bill had passed away earlier this year, so they were just trying to help Bill's family out to clear the estate. So I was like, yeah, I'm looking for a Jeep, and so it worked out. Went and picked that one up, and like I said, not exactly what I'm looking for, but with the history behind it and who owned it, clean title, it's like, heck yeah, man, I'm going to start on, it's just now yard art it went from one yard art to another yard art, but I will get to it, and I would love to fix that thing up. And I've driven them before, not much, but my neighbor not too far from me, we fixed one up for him once, a little 2A, and it was so much fun to wheel. So I look forward to fixing this one up and toying around with it one day and just learning a little bit more on the Jeeps. To me, like, all Jeeps kind of look the same. I've told them, like, all you Jeep people look alike. And it's not that you all look alike. Your Jeeps all look alike to me. They're all Jeeps, so I always got to defer to one of my Jeep friends, like, hey, what kind of Jeep is that? And I'm not even sure. But if you got an international harvester question, I'm your man. So.
There you go. Well, Jeff, I want to thank you so much for spending the time this morning and being willing to come on and talk about your life and the binder business. And I really appreciate it. And the other thing I'd like to say is thank you so much for stopping at my booth during Sierra Trek and finding out about the Off-Road Motorsports Hall of Fame and then becoming a member. That was very nice of you. We're really trying to promote the Hall of Fame and the four-wheel drive side of our industry, and so I really appreciate you doing that.
Absolutely, I appreciate you guys doing what you're doing, because as I've always been an international harvester guy. I used to have, and I probably still have all of them to this day, of subscriptions. Peterson's four-wheel and off-road, four-wheeler, maybe even JP Magazine back in the day, four-wheel drive and sport utility. I used to subscribe to all those. I used to read about these guys my whole life. So, and look up to them. And now, like I said, today I'm so lucky and fortunate to some of these guys I'm wheeling with them side by side and all that, like Chris Durham and stuff, the Chuck Norris of off road.
Yep.
So it's just been an awesome ride. And again, I'm so appreciative that guys like you and others take the time to remember these people that are, the forefathers of where we're at today. Without them, doing what they did, we may not have the trails open that we do. We may not, have the technology in the off-road world that we do, because it's just amazing what it becomes.
Right. And being able to preserve that history and recognize those that came before us is crucial for the survival of the industry as we move forward.
Absolutely. And it's all about preserving history. And that's kind of like what I say about what we do here at IH Parts America every day. Is we're doing our best to preserve history.
There you go. And on that, again, thank you. You have a great day, and I hope business is everything that it can be for you.
Thank you, Rich. I greatly appreciate you having me on your podcast. I'm greatly honored, and thank you. Yeah, I really appreciate it. It's been a blast.
All right, you take care, and I'll let you know when this airs.
Sounds great. Thank you, sir.
Okay, thank you. Bye-bye.
All right. Bye.
Well, that's another episode of Conversations with Big Rich. I'd like to thank you all for listening. If you could do us a favor and leave us a review on any podcast service that you happen to be listening on, or send us an email or a text message or a Facebook message, and let me know any ideas that you have, or if there's anybody that you have that you think would be a great guest, please forward the contact information to me so that we can try to get them on. And always remember, live life to the fullest. Enjoying life is a must. Follow your dreams and live life with all the gusto you can. Thank you.